253 is over. Last week we had a card with 14 fights and only 4 of them went to decision. This week we had an 11 fight event and 6 went to decision. So for all you mathematicians out there, that's over half. It was a fairly slow night, but certainly not devoid of fireworks and explosions. We got a new champion. We saw a current champion really cement his dominance over his division. We got to see a highly ranked fighter blossom into a contender. We saw a tough winner lose and a tough winner win. And we got introduced to a scary Slovakian. We'll go over all that and let you know which decision fights you can avoid. So let's get into it. Here's my real winners and losers of UFC 253. First fight of the night was a light heavyweight bout between Costa and Danilo Marques. Danilo Marques wins this one by unanimous decision. He wins his UFC debut and increases his winning streak to 3. I'm sure he feels good about it, but this was a pretty slow and boring fight, so for the purposes of this video, I can't call him a winner. And with 6 decisions on this card, this is one you're probably going to want to skip. With 1 being the most entertaining and 6 being the least, I gotta rank this as a 6. But let's talk about Costa. He entered the UFC a little over a year ago with high expectations and no professional losses, but with the UFC record of 0-3, he enters this fight really needing a win. But he didn't fight like a guy on the brink of release. He's been criticized a few times for starting too early and gassing out, and seemed to be conserving his energy more in this one, but really he just never got going. I guess we can credit Danilo Marques with some of this, as he spent a lot of effort tying Abrigimov up and taking him to the ground, but Abrigimov showed little aggression and didn't do much to avoid those takedowns, except grab the fence. Abrigimov grabbed the fence several times, got warned several times, but was never penalized, even though it did help him get position a few times. Danilo used the same takedown method successfully over and over, even prompting Paul Felder to refer to Abrigimov as having a lack of fighter IQ. With so much hype from a year ago now exhausted and increasing his losing streak to 4, we've got to call Costa Abrigimov a big loser. Second fight of the night was a heavyweight fight between Juan Espino and Jeff Hughes. This one ended pretty quickly as Juan Espino gets the first round arm triangle choke. And what a nasty choke it was. In fact, I'm not sure it was a choke at all. He didn't look as if he was under the chin and around the neck, more like a neck crank skull crusher. I'm sure Hughes tapped for fear of getting broken rather than going unconscious. Espino won the Ultimate Fighter 28 nearly 2 years ago, and this was his first fight since, and it took him less than 4 minutes. He looked good on the show, and he looked good here. He didn't look like a guy coming off a long layoff. If you count those tough wins, he's now on a 3-fight win streak and a 3-fight submission streak. He's done enough and did enough to warrant a step up in competition. Let's hope he gets it. The heavyweight division is really exciting right now, and if Espino can be more active, he may find himself a pretty big player. Juan Espino, big winner. Next up was a light heavyweight bout between William Knight and Alexa Kimura. Here's a fight with 2 Contender Series alumni, and I suspect we're going to start seeing a lot of this. The Contender Series is pumping a lot of talent into the UFC, kind of like the early days of the Ultimate Fighter. I remember a time when it seemed like half the guys on the roster had appeared in some season of TUF, and it seems like Contender is aiming to do the same thing, to become the new UFC feeder system. And with many champions coming from TUF, Forrest Griffin, Rashad Evans, Michael Bisping, TJ Dillashaw, Kamaru Usman, Rose Namajunas, Robert Whittaker. We can only hope for more of the same from Contender Series. If you're not watching it, check it out sometime. It's a nice, tidy 5-fight card breaking up the weekly downtime by airing on Tuesday nights. I really like it, but I'm not here to plug Contender, so let's talk about William Knight. William Knight wins this one by unanimous decision. William Knight is super strong, so strong that he was able to get Kimura down with some really unorthodox and non-technical takedowns. Just pulled him down. He nearly muscled out a submission at the end of the second round and had a few moments of some good ground and pound too. He gives Kimura his first professional loss, but it was really kind of a slow fight. In fact, 1 out of 6 in the decision fights. This one probably comes in at number 5. So you know what? Yeah, let's plug Contender Series. Knight and Kimura are not the best fighters we've seen come from the show, but they both offer potential. We've already seen some really talented guys like Edmund Shabazian, Sean O'Malley, Kevin Holland. Told you I'd keep talking about him. Jeff Neal, Alex Perez, Macy Barber, Augusta Sakai, Johnny Walker, Marina Rodriguez. All these guys have come from Contender. I'm not sure how many fights we've seen between Contender Series alums so far, but we're sure to see many more. And with any luck, we'll see a few champions from it too. So here's to hoping that Dana White's Contender Series can turn into the reimagined, revitalized The Ultimate Fighter. Contender Series. Big winner. Next up is a featherweight bout between Shane Young and Ludovic Klein. This was supposed to be Shane Young and Nate Landwehr, but Landwehr tested positive for COVID earlier in the week, got replaced by Ludovic Klein on only a few days' notice, and Ludovic made the most of his opportunity. This is the scary Slovakian I was talking about. He wins this one by KO in only 1 minute and 16 seconds of the very first round. Ludovic comes in overweight, but maybe that can be forgiven when called upon on short notice. Other than the weight issue, Ludovic did everything right. He wins his UFC debut in stunning fashion and increases his winning streak to 8. If you don't know Ludovic, then look him up. He's called the highlight for a reason. He connected with a head kick and followed it up with some fists that all landed. He has great kicks and combinations, and he puts them together in deadly use. Ludovic may turn out to be a contender in an already stacked division, but hey, we can always have one more. Coming in on short notice, I don't know what kind of contract he signed or if he signed one at all, but the UFC would be stupid not to sign this kid to a multi-fight deal, and the UFC ain't stupid. At 25 years old and already with a record of 17-2, there's a bright future for this kid, and I'm looking forward to it. Ludovic Klein, big winner. Next up is the welterweight fight between Diego Sanchez and Jake Matthews. Jake Matthews wins this one by unanimous decision, 30-26 on all scorecards. I don't think I'd really call it dominance, but Jake did win this one pretty easily, but that was expected. Jake looked good, but we are continuing to see the fall of Diego Sanchez, and there's no shame there. He's the winner of Ultimate Fighter 1 after all, which premiered 15 years ago. We all declined at some point, and for Diego, that point is now. I can't call Diego a loser because he was never going to win this fight, and he really made a decent account of himself tonight. It'd be easier to call Conor McGregor a loser based off this performance. Is this really the guy old Mystic Mac wants to fight? I watched this fight on ESPN+. Maybe it was different on other broadcasts, but when introducing the fighters, the marquee showed Matthews as a plus 500 underdog. I jumped up from my couch, grabbed my computer, and tried to put as much money as possible on Jake Matthews. Of course, I soon found out it was a mistake and Matthews was the overwhelming favorite, which he should have been. Matthews did what was expected and looked good doing it, only falling short by not getting the finish. Diego's a hard guy to put away, sure, but a promising prospect like Jake Matthews should be able to put away this declining fighter. Should I even call him a prospect? He's been in the UFC for 6 years and has 14 UFC fights. The last time Matthews did finish a fight was over 2 years ago, and this was a prime spot for him to get back on track. We all love the psychopath that is Diego Sanchez, but he just doesn't seem to possess the fight-ending power or flurries that he once did. Matthews didn't face any real threat here, and at this point in his career, he should have made easy work out of Diego. But instead, it was a fairly entertaining fight. 1 through 6, I would rank it at number 2, but then again, I'm a little partial to bloodshed. He beat and bloodied Sanchez, but that was expected. And not being able to get the finish victory here, well, maybe we should just expect decision wins from Jake Matthews moving forward. He looked great in a fairly easy fight, but without a finish, I find it hard to call him a winner. So let's move on. There's no real winner here. Headlining fight of the undercard was a lightweight bout between Brad Riddell and Aleksandar Silva. Riddell wins this one by unanimous decision. It was a very competitive fight, going 29-28 on all scorecards. I was looking forward to this one, thinking that it would be really entertaining. It kinda was, but it could have been better. It was one of those fights where both fighters did enough to not be boring, but not enough to be a gripping, who's gonna win, I'll get another beer after the fight kind of fight. In fact, after watching 11 fights, this is one I'm kinda having a hard time recalling. Both guys are promising with very few losses on their records, but neither guy really showed us why we need to keep an eye on them. 1 through 6 on the decision fights. This one comes in at number 3. If you're a big fight fan, you'll watch it anyway, but if not, go ahead and skip it. There's no real winner here. In fact, the only reason I would have given it to Duadu would have been from his obscene yelling while briskly walking forward and prompting Chookagian to actually fight near the end of the 3rd round, which Chookagian politely declined. Not a lot to talk about in this one. 1 through 6 on decision wins. I'm going to put this in at 3. Again, let's move on. There's no real winner here. Second fight on the main card was a women's bantamweight bout between ranked number 7 Katlyn and ranked number 13 Sajara Eubanks. This was another very close one with all scorecards reading 29-28, but this one had a lot more action and was a lot more entertaining. Of the 6 decision wins, this one definitely takes first prize. Both fighters made a good account on themselves. They both looked very game and competent. But man, I just can't predict a Sajara Eubanks fight. I don't think I've ever accurately called one of Sajara's fights. So remember that for future reference. Whatever I go with, you go with the opposite. Sarge fought well, but Vieira's size and strength just proved a little too much. Vieira fought well, but Sajara's toughness wouldn't let her ever really get ahead. It was a good fight, but neither girl really made a case for themselves here. Watch if you want to, but they only showed us what we already know. So for the purposes of this video, there's no real winner here either. Next up is a flyweight bout between ranked number 7 KaraFrance and ranked number 9 Royval. Now we're getting to the good stuff. KaraFrance is pretty highly touted and has given us no reason to think that he won't be a contender one day, but he does have a certain lack of dynamic fight-ending sequences in the UFC. In the flyweight division, we can excuse that a little, but that's what makes flyweight finishers so awesome, and Royval is just that. This fight starts with fireworks. KaraFrance hits Royval early and looks like he may finally get that UFC stoppage, but as Royval is going down, he let go with a spinning elbow. Several incredible sprawls ensue with some good fisticuffs thrown in there. The first round was awesome, but it didn't take Brandon very long in the second round to snatch up a guillotine choke. Royval is now 2 fights into his UFC career and already has 2 finishes. This division desperately needs some new contenders, and finishing the ranked number 7 guy is a really good way to climb the rankings. You gotta think he'll be ranked 7 or possibly lower in just a few days' time. He's looking sharp and probably only 1 win away from a title fight. Quit your day job, Brandon, and go for the gold. Royval, big winner. Co-main event was a light heavyweight bout between number 1 Dominick Reyes and number 3 Jan Blachowicz, and this one was to capture that vacant belt and become the new king of the division. The king is dead, long live the king. Like the heavyweight division, the light heavyweight division is one to really keep an eye on. There's so many great fights to make, so many great fighters that could find themselves challenging the new divisional king very soon. My money says Thiago Santos will be next in line. This was a good fight that honestly had Dominick Reyes written all over it, but Dom was just not in championship mindset. All over the internet, people were predicting him to win. True to my name, I felt like the lonely fight predictor calling Blachowicz. Dom thought he was already champion and seemed to be looking right past Juan at all the great things that come with the belt. After taking that decision loss to Jon Jones so poorly, I had little doubt that he would lose his next fight. Dom has spent the last half year talking about how he knows that he won that Jones fight, how he's the real champ, how the fans know who the real champ is, about how Jon Jones is scared of a rematch. He said an awful lot about Jon Jones and strikingly little about Jan Blachowicz. I like Dominick Reyes, and I believe he's going to accomplish many things in his career. I think the light heavyweight belt will likely change hands many times over the next 2 or 3 years, and at some point Dominick's going to hold it, but not today. He loses his title shot, has to climb the mountain again, and has to learn a very important and humbling lesson. So Dominick Reyes, big loser. Now that's not to undersell Blachowicz. This dude has been on a tear and has really come into his own as of late. He deserved this title shot, and he deserved this win. He started strong in this fight and looked every bit a champion from the moment it started. He ate up Dominick's legs and the side of his abdomen with kicks, leaving them red and redder with each strike. He bloodied him up with punches to the face and refused to stray from his game plan, eventually ending Dom's night late in the second round with a TKO. Jan Blachowicz, new king of the division, big winner. Main event was the middleweight title fight between champion Israel Adesanya and number 2 contender Paulo Costa. Israel Adesanya wins this one by second round TKO. Israel Adesanya proves that the skinny kid can beat up and knock out the hulky bulky musclehead. But Izzy's not your average skinny kid. This dude is the truth. The Romero fight was a bit of a dud, but I find it hard to blame Izzy for that. In that fight, Adesanya was showing himself. He was throwing feints. He was trying to get Romero to do, well, anything. But Romero just simply refused. But we got to see a lot more in this fight. This one was built up as a bull versus matador type of fight, but the bull was never released. The matador, though, repeatedly lanced that somewhat stoic beast. Costa looked more like Romero than his usual chaotically violent self, and Izzy just ate him up, whelping up his legs and opening up his face. For a man who barely speaks English, Paulo Costa talked a lot of smack building up to this fight, and he had some good trash talk too. I was often very amused by it. But after saying so much, you gotta back it up or risk looking silly. Costa didn't back it up, and Izzy made him look silly. Costa loses his undefeated record, loses his title shot, and is going to be eating crow sandwiches for several weeks. For the purposes of this video series, we got to call Paulo Costa a big loser. So is Izzy so good that fighters just get confused and don't know what to do? This is 2 fights in a row that we've seen onrushing, aggressive fighters lay back looking static and dazed. The question has to be asked, how good is Israel Adesanya? We all know he's really, really good. But is it possible that he's way better than that? He's already beaten 5 of the top 8 in his division, and he just looked better than ever. With a really high fight IQ, insane athletic ability, and several years left in his career, it's easy to assume he's only going to get better. I look forward to seeing who his next opponent is and how he handles him. But for now, it certainly seems that Izzy may remain king of the middleweights for a very long time. Israel Adesanya, big winner. So there's my real winners and losers for UFC 253. As mentioned in my prediction video of this event, this is likely the last of the winners and losers series. They're hard to make in a timely fashion and they just don't get many views. If you enjoy the winners and losers series and would like to see more of them, leave me a thumbs up on this video. A subscribe wouldn't hurt either. If I get enough likes, I'll keep the series alive. Now, I'm no big shot. I know my role. I don't expect to get many of them, but 10, 15, 20 likes, a few more subscribes, that'll let me know that my work is appreciated and that I'm on the right track. But for God's sakes, don't give me a sympathy vote either. But one way or another, I'm going to keep up the predictions videos, and with several fights on Fight Island, we've got a lot of prediction videos to make. So hit the subscribe button so you can be notified when those videos get released. There are some really good events coming up, and I'm really looking forward to talking about them. Until next time.